Alhamdulillah, Allah gives us this opportunity to come week in, week out, and to reflect and to take some time out to think about the trajectory of our life, what we are achieving, what we are doing, and how we can draw in proximity to Allah. It's difficult. The reason it's difficult is because we live in a world that is constantly talking about everything other than Allah, that is constantly inviting us to everything other than Allah. That, from every advert that I will see on my mobile phone, whether on YouTube, whether on any social media platform, to the billboards that I will see, to even a bus going past, the advertisements I will see, everything is calling me to something other than Allah. Everything is inviting me to something other than Allah. And this is one of the difficulties and the challenges of the world that we live in. I was mentioning to some of the students recently that, can you imagine there's a hadith, the first hadith of Al-Adab al-Mufrad. That first hadith, it's a beautiful hadith. It's the tabi'i, he turns and he points to a house and he says, I heard from sahibu hadha dar. I heard from the person who resides in that house. And he was referring to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. That's it, just that part of the hadith. I said to him, stop and reflect on that. What is like, can you imagine being able to point at a house and say, oh, that's Ibn Mas'ud's house? And further down the street, Khalid ibn Walid lives there, and Ibn Abbas lives over there, and this companion lives over there, and that companion lives over there. And as you step out, you might be rubbing shoulders with one of these great companions. You might be walking past one of these. You'll go to the marketplace and you'll see another great companion stood there selling some food and selling this and selling clothing and selling armor or whatever. And then you'll go to the masjid and you'll stand in the same saf with some of these companions. And one of them will come running in late because they haven't, they've been busy with something or they were distracted or whatever. They come running in late. And then you leave to go. I said, just this start of this hadith where Imam Bukhari mentions the first hadith where he says, I heard from the resident of that house over there. It's a different time. It's a different place. There's a reason the hadith scholars, they would say, we don't need the things of this world. We have the companionship of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, when you're locked away in your little room and you're reading through a hadith, you're just in the presence of the Sahaba, you're in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're in the presence of these great individuals. A person doesn't yearn for the things of this world. And this is something which you'll see amongst the people. This is something I've seen from my teachers as well. When you step into their home, have I shown you guys a video of this before? Of Mufti Shabir's house or other people's? You step into the house. I took a few times, I've taken a slide video just to kind of, one day to show people. You don't know what the color of the wallpaper is. You don't, like when you walk into a kitchen and you have kitchen tiles, like you have kitchen cupboards everywhere. It's like that, but bookshelves. Huh? I've shown it. You've seen it. To the extent that even on top of the curtain, that little gap that you have, there's a bookshelf there, the Musnad of Imam Ahmad sits there. And the entire room is covered in books. It's like that's the wallpaper. And I remember when I was doing some bookbinding once, and you kind of, the way you do it is you take a hadith book, and then you rip the spine out. You take the kind of pages off, and then you add in a sheet of paper in between each page. The reason you do that is then when you're making notes, you have a blank piece of paper in between each. So you have the hadith on this side, you have your blank piece of paper on this side. You turn that blank piece of paper, now the blank piece of paper is on the right, the hadith is on the left. The hadith page you turn, now the hadith is on the right and the blank sheet is on the left. So you've interspaced, and then you'll kind of make that into two separate volumes, and then you'll re-spine it. So I was doing this, and we were using glue, and we were using, like a good, nice leather and different kind of stuff. And one of our teachers, he walked in, and he was just sat there watching us, and he goes, this was in Ifta when we were doing the Mufti course. His name was Mufti Ikram al-Haq. He's one of the most senior scholars of the UK. Absolute brilliant scholar. So he said to us, we used to do this back in the days when we were students as well. And he goes, so what we used to do, we never had glue and this. We used to get flour and we used to mix it with water. And then we used to use that glue. You know, even when you make samosas and stuff like that, you do that. Even today, you guys won't have a clue. You guys know about the eating of the samosa, but you get you get the pastry, and then you put the thingy in, the whatever, the keema or whatever, and then you fold it up, and then you get that flour water mixture, and then you put it in, and then you seal it like that, right? And so he says that we used to use that as the glue. He goes, but except we used to put rat poison inside that. So what do you mean rat poison? He goes, well, if you put flour inside the binding of the book, in hot countries, what happens is the mites, the kind of bookworms and stuff like that, they come to eat it because they come to eat that flour. They can smell it. So we put rat poison so they don't come for it. And yeah, I was thinking to myself, the amount of work that other generations have gone through and the efforts that people have put into to study this knowledge and to be able to study a hadith, and it comes to that one starting of that hadith where a person just reads it and thinks to themselves, what a society they lived in and what a society that we live in. Like, what would they say of our society today? If you step out and you see sins everywhere, you see fitna everywhere, you see a challenge everywhere, and how would they react to this kind of a society? And so it's about creating. This is the biggest thing I've said to, most reverts. I put everybody in the same category, whether it's reverts, whether it's new Muslims, whether it's people who are trying to become righteous, people who have come out of prison, youngsters, any of these different groups that ask me what's the one advice you give, I always give the same advice, which is company. Find good company. Find good company. That is what will make or break you. That is what will make or break you. There is nothing more important than good company. I was with Imam Ashraf Dabous from Lewisham Mosque, and we were in the office, and it was me, him, Imam Sabir from Lewisham, and somebody else. And he goes to me, he goes, Mufti Amir, one of the biggest things the public misses out on? He goes, being able to sit at the feet of scholars. And I thought that's such a profound statement. And just to be able to sit in the presence of good scholarship, I'm telling you, it's life-changing. It's life-changing. Like, just not even scholarship in terms of like lots of knowledge and lots of this and lots of that. It's just good company. Good company, somebody who reminds you of the akhirah, somebody who makes you think about Allah, somebody who makes you think about the direction of your life, somebody who allows you to exit that bubble and allows you to kind of pull yourself out of the dunya for a little bit. That blessing of just having good company, it's there's a youngster who comes to the youth who comes to the cave, and he's studying in Bulgaria right now. I think I mentioned him previously as well. He's studying in Bulgaria, and when he comes back every holidays and stuff, he comes to the cave, he comes to the Nafs classes, he comes to everything. So I said to him that before, when you were living here, you never used to come as much, but now you're in Bulgaria, you come even more. So he goes that when I'm in Bulgaria, I realize how much of this you're lacking there. There's none of this there. There's no masjids, there's no this, there's no Muslim community, there's no presence of Islam. We at least have it to some degree. We're fortunate, right? We're fortunate to have it to some degree. But the vast majority of places and the vast majority of people don't have the blessings that we have. But this is where a person has to take that responsibility. That's one thing. The other thing that I'll mention is alongside good company, is you also have to become good company. You also have to become good company. The person, when you become good company, the person it benefits the most is you. When you become good company, the person it benefits the most is you. When you're inviting somebody to something good, you have to do that good now. You can't invite somebody to good and not do it yourself. If you're inviting somebody, come, let's wake up for tahajjud, let's do this, let's do that, let's do these different things, various things, you can't not do it yourself. That is a form of accountability. That keeps you accountable. That keeps you pushing, right? And so not only is it about becoming good or finding good company, because remember, what does it mean to find good company? Imagine as a vehicle, you can only operate when somebody is towing you, when you're being towed by somebody. You're a pretty useless vehicle. As far as a car goes, if you can only function and you can only drive and you can only move when somebody else is pulling you, you're not a very useful vehicle. Like, you might as well just jump out and sit in a passenger as a passenger in the other person's vehicle. Like, there has to come a point where you drive independently, but not only that, not only you're driving independently, you're now pulling other people, you're towing other people. And so as a believer, a believer can never be complacent and comfortable with constantly being towed. The believer has to think, now, I have to take some responsibility. Right? Just the few of us that are sat here, if we take that responsibility and if we understand how many people are yearning for faith, how many people are looking for somebody like yourselves, somebody who they can relate to, somebody who, the amount of young women, the amount of young men who are completely lost, who have lost their identities, who have lost their confidence, who have, this issue, that issue. One of the biggest surges that I'm seeing, especially in kind of conversations, is I think we need some really, really solid counselors. Counseling is something that's really required at the moment, right? So whether that's mental health stuff, whether that's marriage counselors, whether that's various different forms of counseling, I think it's extremely, extremely important. And it's something that as a Muslim community, we need it. We're at a stage where we need it. And the problem is, a lot of the time, you can't really have imams doing all of the counseling or any of the counseling, because first of all, they're not trained in it. If they're not trained in it, that's obviously going to be an issue, because what you might say right and what you might say wrong is going to be an issue. So you can't just fob it off onto imams, number one. Number two, if the person who's doing the counseling has no guidelines or no barriers or no safeguarding, the problem is, in most cases that I'm hearing now, it's somebody who's extremely vulnerable going to somebody who's going to exploit that. And that's a real case scenario as well that's happening, where people who are vulnerable, they go to somebody seeking help, and that person exploits that position of power. And this exploitation of power has always existed in all forms of life, right? So whether that's in religious circles, whether that's in the movie circles, whether that's going to be in education circles, these are obviously things that we have to safeguard against. But I think it's very, very important that as Muslims, we become of benefit, we become of use, we become useful to other people. And so, that in and of itself will assist you as well. One of the things that's most frustrating amongst Muslims today is that I'm just worried about myself. I'm just worried about my house, my wealth, my investment, my money, everything to do with me. The idea of helping somebody else selflessly, without anybody knowing about it, without it becoming public knowledge, without it becoming, everybody's talking about it, or without me gaining something from it, it's non-existent. As believers, we have to change that. As believers, we have to go against that. That I have to, and remember, helping somebody isn't always giving them money or this and that. Helping them, the best way you can help somebody is to preserve their next life, to put them into Jannah, to save them from the fire of hell. Right? And there's so many people looking for it. There's one guy in our Quran in 7 that we completed during the summer holidays. He ended up in prison. And his first night in prison, that entire night, he spoke with a Muslim. The entire night. And that Muslim just told him about Islam. And it was from that moment that he wanted to become a Muslim. And if you hear his journey, it's insane. He the next day, so when you come into the prison, that first night, you're not on the wing, you're kind of going through the processing, etc. So he was with this guy speaking about this. Then he ended up in prison. When he went into prison, the person whose cell he was in, he was a Muslim, but he didn't care about Islam and he didn't really talk about Islam. He'd ask him questions about Islam and he'd say, bro, don't talk to me about, I don't know, I'm the wrong person. Talk to the Imam. So he tried to get his hands on the Imam, to speak to the Imam and say, I want to know more about Islam. Things kept happening where, it took a few days before he would get kind of put onto the list where he could speak to an Imam, and kept getting delayed. And then eventually, when he got a meeting with the Imam, they said, okay, we're transferring you to prison, to a different prison. So he got moved to another prison. And so again, when he went, the first thing he asked for was an Imam. Can I speak to the Imam? They said, look, you've just come in, you're in isolation, you can't speak to an Imam yet. You'll have to wait till you're on the wing. So when he comes onto the wing again, he finds another good brother who starts speaking to him, and he gives him a Quran, and he starts reading the Quran. And this guy, by the way, yeah, if you listen to him talk, this guy is as roadman as it gets. I spent 7 days with him. After 7 days, I started saying, come on. Like, like that's what he'd say. When he'd get an Arabic word right, he'd like, come on, like that, and he'd be like, yes, gee, like, and I'm just sat there thinking, like, this isn't, but this is what it looks like. This is the beauty of it. And then he accepted Islam. And it was a few months he was in prison for, and he came out of prison. And I was talking to him, and I said to him, when you went into prison, that first day, what was your thoughts? And he goes, this was the worst thing that's happened in my life. I can't believe I got caught, this, that, etc. I said, how did your mom feel? He's close to his mom. So his mom was crying like non-stop. She's Muslim, by the way. He wasn't Muslim. She'd try and tell him about Islam. He wasn't interested. And I said to him, in my opinion, going to prison was the greatest day of your life, because that's where you found Islam. You see, the way Allah kind of makes us think that the worst thing that's happening to us, Allah knows how to make that into the best thing that happens to us. This is better than the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. Although that's difficult to say, because Allah says that the story of Yusuf is ahsanul qasas. But the scholars explain what he means by ahsanul qasas. Allah can mean that it's got all of the different plots that you would have. It's got romance, and it's got this, and it's got power, and it's got all the different dynamics that you'd expect from a kind of movie of some sort. And so that's one story. And I'm so tempted to kind of put together a whole host of stories. There's one sister who got cancer in a certain part of her brain, and because of that cancer, she forgot how to read Quran. She could read Quran. And so she said, there's no way I'm going back to Allah without knowing how to read Quran. So she joined the Quran in 7, and she learned to read the Quran, and she's reading Quran again. Like the amount of people that, there's crazy stories. There's one guy who was coming to the Quran in 7, morning to evening, and his parents don't know that he's Muslim. So he has to conceal his Islam. So he takes his you get some people who they leave their home looking religious, and then as soon as they get on the bus, they take off their religious clothing and then they put on their other life. For him, it's the other way around. He leaves the home in normal clothes. Then when he comes to the camp, he puts on his thobe, and then he walks in as a Muslim. Then when he leaves again, he kind of changes back into his normal clothes. Salah, he has to kind of hide and perform his salah. What I'm saying to you is the amount of people that need help, the amount of people that want help, the amount of people that are looking for guidance. These are not people who are, there's so many intelligent people I come across. The problem is we're scared of our own religion. The problem is we don't have the conviction, we don't have the belief in our religion. Umar radiallahu anhu said it beautifully, didn't he? He says, A'azzana Allahu bil Islam. Allah gave us honor and dignity through Islam. That's where our honor and dignity comes from. We don't gain our honor and dignity from anything else. Not from our fashion, not from our clothing, not from our dress sense, not from our money, not from our bank balance. None of these things give us honor and dignity. Azzana Allahu bil Islam idha ibtaghayna al-izza fi ghayri al-Islam. If we look for honor and dignity in anything other than Islam, adallana Allah, Allah will humiliate us once more. Allah will humiliate us once more if we look for it in anything else. It's not in riches, it's not in money, it's not in power, it's not in any of these things. It's in Islam. It's in submission to Allah. Ibn al-Qayyim, that's all he's trying to put into our minds. Is it not time for us to submit to Allah? Is it not time that we fight with Allah against the nafs? We bring Allah onto our side and we fight against the nafs. And I would go a step further and say we're not even fighting against the nafs. Even the nafs is on our side. We're fighting against shaitan. It's me, Allah, and the nafs against shaitan. That's what this looks like. And so that's how we should frame this. We shouldn't look at the nafs as the nafs keeps trying to tempt me into sin, and the nafs keeps doing this, and it's a conversation with the nafs that I want the best for you. It's shaitan who doesn't. I want the best for you. Allah wants the best for you. The Prophet ﷺ wants the best for you. Shaitan doesn't. Who are you going to keep listening to? And so the objective of us coming here again and again and again is this intent, that how can I make it such that my nafs comes into submission to Allah? And there has to come a point. There's like 35 days left till the month of Ramadan. And so a person has to take some responsibility now and say to themselves, look, whether I get to the end of this book or not, I might not even be alive by the end of this book. But whether I get to the end of this book or not, at least it's time now I start practicing on what I've been talking about, what I've been thinking about, what I've been reflecting on. It's time we actually do something. And so this is, obviously we've had a bit of a break and now we're back. And so these were some random comments that I thought I would mention. But I started with this idea of spending time in the company of righteous, spending time in the company of the pious, spending time in the company, And so even right now, we were sat, me and my wife, we were discussing for Ramadan. We were thinking, what do we do for the month of Ramadan? How do we make it such that now we are engaging with those people who need it the most? And so we're thinking, realistically, when it comes to women, they don't have many opportunities to really find a community or build community, especially as reverts. And so we were thinking of maybe every evening something at Zidna for the sisters, for the reverts especially. And then we're thinking for the men after Taraweeh, maybe something consistent every single night or something, not at Zidna, but at one of the masjids. There's loads of options and loads of things that, and again, if you guys have suggestions as well, feel free to share that with us. But how can we make ourselves of most benefit and most use to people? I think that's the key that we should be thinking now. How can we make somebody's experience of Ramadan that much better? Allah gives us these special moments, these special times to reconnect with Him. You see, if every moment is special, then no moment is special. If every moment is special, if every day is Ramadan, then really no day is really Ramadan. Ramadan is an excuse. Allah throws little excuses at us. Right? Friday is an excuse. Jumu'ah is a day of excuse for us that come back. Mondays and Thursdays is an excuse for us. Each morning, each sunrise and each sunset is an excuse for us. These are from the divine signs of Allah. From the divine signs of Allah, the sun rising and the sun setting, it's a brand new day. It's a day that never comes back. It's a new date that will never be experienced by people who did not experience it ever again. And that's part of the blessings of Allah, that He gives us opportunity after opportunity. With the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun. And like Hassan al-Basri said, don't see this rising of the sun and the setting of the sun and the passage of time as just the passage of time. Actually, it's the passage of you. A part of you has melted. Imagine you as a block of ice. And each day that passes, a block of you melts. 2 days, I think yesterday I had a really bad headache. I was supposed to go to Streatham Hill because Sheikh Bilal was there. I wasn't able to go because I had a headache. And I was just thinking to myself, with the headache, I was thinking it was a really, really bad one. And I said to myself, imagine this headache, and Allah took this headache and placed it in my arms, placed it in my legs, placed it in my back, placed it in every part of my body. That's a punishment of this world. I wouldn't be able to bear it. What can I fathom of the punishment of the next life? What can I even come close to considering and thinking about when it comes to the punishment of the next life? We think about fire and we think about this, but we forget about the internal punishments of that life. That you think you'll be stood in the fire without the most excruciating headache and without the worst back pains and without this pain and without that pain and without that pain. Like, we're not cut out for this. We're not made for this. And this is part of the process that a person, and some of the verses that we are hopefully going to get to today, if we do get to, inshallah, that looks at some of the punishments. We look at rewards as well as punishments. It's a balance of the two, right? But in those moments, in the moments of happiness and bliss, you remind yourself that imagine what the bliss of Jannah is like. There's a person who my wife was talking to a couple of days ago. 9 months she was pregnant. She gives birth. Imagine the excitement of giving birth. A week later, the child passes away. It's part of the challenges of this life. It's part of the trials and the tests that Allah sends, right? It's much worse than a miscarriage. And by the way, even in miscarriages, you're extremely attached emotionally and in various different ways. But this is somebody who's now born. This is somebody who now, you've seen kind of with your eyes, and it's now a reality. And all of that hard work, and Allah takes that blessing away. That's, I guess, Surah Al-Kahf is useful for that. Allah has His plans. Allah knows what He's doing. That child is in Jannah. That child is waiting to drag the mother into Jannah and the parents into Jannah, inshallah. But this is the nature of this world, right? And that's what Ibn al-Qayyim, he plans on talking about today. That everything you attach your heart to in this world, everything you connect to in this world, it's fleeting. It's not here to stay. Everything is going to go. And as much as I'm upset with something leaving me, I have to leave this world one day as well. So either that thing is torn from me or I am torn from it. So if you're in a relationship, you have a husband and a wife, either the husband is torn away from the wife, or that wife will be torn away from the husband. And in everything that you love and everything that you desire and everything that you make your purpose, you're going to be dragged away from it, from this world. When does the heart yearn for the akhirah? When does the heart yearn to be with Allah? When all its investments are with Allah. If your entire life has been about investing in this world, investing in my property, investing in my bed, investing in my nice back garden, my front garden, my this, my upstairs, my downstairs, new carpets, new this, new that, constantly investing in the matters of this world, I've left nothing for the akhirah. Why would I yearn for the akhirah? My heart is attached here. My heart is glued to this world. Ibn al-Qayyim, in this set of discussions, that's what he wants to break. That's what he wants to address. Al-Wajh al-Sadis, he says, أن تعلق العبد بما سوى الله تعالى مضرة عليه. That the attachment of the heart of an individual to anything other than Allah is damaging to it. إذا أخذ منه فوق القدر الزائد على حاجته, especially when you take more than what is required of your needs. This world, you need part of this world. You need from this world. There are blessings in this world that I yearn for, that I want. There's nothing wrong with taking from the blessings of this world. This world and its blessings and all of these things is for us. But Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah says that the more you attach yourself to this world, the harder it is for you to pull away from it. غَيْرُ مُسْتَعِينًا بِهِ عَلَى طَاعَةِ اللَّهِ. Really and truly, the blessings of this world should take me to Allah. فإذا نال من الطعام والشراب والنكاح واللباس فوق حاجته ضره ذلك. When I take from this world more than I need from it, whether that's in terms of my wealth, whether that's in terms of my clothing, whether that's in terms of any aspect, then that will harm me, that will harm the individual. It's not beneficial for us. وَلَوْ أَحَبَّ سِوَى اللَّهِ مَا أَحَبَّ فَلَا بُدَّ أَيْ يُسْلَبَهُ وَيُفَارِقَهُ. That if a person loves anything other than Allah more than he should, they should know that it is necessary for them to be separated from it. But remember, there's a balance in this. So we're talking about loving Allah, but we always look at, like for some reason, we can never synthesize and do 1 + 1. We always see 1, and we never see +1 and +1 and +1. We're talking about loving only Allah. But I said to you the first hadith of Al-Adab al-Mufrad, the book of Imam Bukhari. What's that first hadith? It's about love for the parents. It's about the reverence and the etiquette that a person owes to their parents. It's talking about how a person should be with their parents. It's talking about how a person should, a person comes to the Prophet ﷺ and he says, "Oh Prophet of Allah, I'm ready to go for jihad. But I left my mother crying at home." The Prophet ﷺ said, "Go back and make her laugh the way you made her cry. Fajahid fihima." And he says, your jihad is in your parents. Then you think about this. Think about this. We're talking about jihad. We're talking about something which is going to be giving your life for the sake of Allah, giving your wealth for the sake of Allah. But the Prophet of Allah ﷺ says, your parents have more of a priority. If you look at the narrations that talk about parents, and the Ajib hadith, Rida Rabbi fi Rida al-Walidi. The happiness and the joy and the pleasure of Allah is in the pleasure and the happiness of your parents. وَسَخَطُ الرَّبِّ فِي سَخَطِ الْوَالِدِ. And the anger of Allah, the wrath of Allah is in your father's anger, your father's wrath, etc. These ahadith, when the Prophet ﷺ talks about, who should you give precedence to, your mother, then who next your mother, then who next your mother, then who next your father, that famous hadith. I have to reflect on this. When I sit in front of scholars, when I sit in front of teachers, when I sit in front of other friends of mine, do I show a higher level of reverence to them or to my parents? What is my case? What does Allah say? Does Allah say that the happiness and the pleasure of Allah is in your scholars, or in your sheikh, in your teacher, or does Allah say it's with your parents? This is what a person has to reflect on. That there is love for parents, there is love for children, there is love for your partner, your husband, your wife. There is love in all of these things. Allah wants you to do all of that. There is love for your friends, loving for the sake of Allah. That there's a hadith that talk about a person who loves another individual for the sake of Allah, then they will be on manabir, they will be on these these pulpits of light on the day of judgment. Right? The relationships we foster for the sake of Allah. And so these are very, very fundamental ideas, but Allah is saying fundamentally that Allah is the one who should be at the center of everything. It's not me who's at the center of everything. In every one of my actions, in every one of my decisions, let me ask myself, how much am I placing myself at the center? Allah is at the center. Allah will make decisions in my life that I will not understand, that I cannot make sense of, but Allah is doing it because He knows what's better for me. Allah knows that there is a wisdom in this. I cannot fathom it. It's the worst thing that's happened. Allah knows what He's doing. Allah is at the center of my existence, not me. If Allah decides something, I trust in His wisdom. I know He will bring something beautiful out of this. But why is it that it's always about me? Why is it that Allah, why did you do this to me? Allah, why couldn't you have done this to somebody else? Allah, why am I going through this? Allah is giving us in ways we cannot imagine. And I've said this so many times to us. رُبَّمَا أَعْطَاكَ فَمَنَعَكَ. Sometimes Allah gives us, but in actual fact He's taking away. And sometimes Allah takes something away from us, but we don't realize He's giving us something profound. He's giving us something bigger and better. And so this is a fundamental idea, that my love for Allah is not conditional, that Allah, if you do me favors, I love you. Allah, if you do good by me, then I love you. Allah, if you give me blessings, then I love you. Allah, if this, no. Allah, my love for you is unconditional. Because there is nothing that I can love that is going to ultimately make me happy, except for you, Allah. And so, فإن أحبه لغير الله فلا بد أن تضره محبته ويعذب بمحبوبه إما في الدنيا وإما في الآخرة. When you love something other than Allah, know that you will be hurt by that thing. That's the nature of life. But remember, the beauty of loving for the sake of Allah is when Allah takes that thing from you, you say to yourself, that was Allah's plan. If Allah took it now, if Allah took it in 10 years, if Allah took it in 20 years, if Allah took it in 50 years, if Allah took me first and then took that thing was to go anyway. This is Allah's plan. Allah, you took it at the time that you deem best. And Allah, you took it in the way that you deem best. Everything we are attached to in this world, it will hurt us at some point. إِمَّا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَإِمَّا فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Either it will harm us in this world or it will harm us in the akhirah. وَالْغَالِبُ أَنَّهُ يُعَذَّبُ بِهِ فِي الدَّارَيْنِ. Allah mentions in the Quran, وَالَّذِينَ يَكْنِزُونَ الذَّهَبَ وَالْفِضَّةَ. Those individuals who amass gold and silver. وَلَا يُنْفِقُونَهَا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And they do not spend it in the path of Allah. They gather all of this wealth and they just hoard it. فَبَشِّرْهُمْ بِعَذَابٍ أَلِيمٍ. Give them glad tidings of a punishment, of a severe punishment, of a painful punishment. It's a very interesting, فَبَشِّرْهُمْ. Bashara is good news. Give them the good news of a very severe punishment. Allah dislikes this quality. Why? Because you're not benefiting people. You're not benefiting people. You should be ultimately a benefit. Now the other scholars, they say that they are hoarding it. They don't even give zakah, etc. And that's why this verse is mentioned regarding them. And so what will happen? يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمْ. I want you to keep this one thing in mind. Every action we do in this world, it translates into a type of action in the next life. Listen to that carefully again. If I say one subhanallah, it does not come on the day of judgment as a subhanallah. It has a physical form on the day of judgment that it comes as. If I recite Quran, that has a physical form that it comes as on the day of judgment, and it comes and benefits me. Any sin and disobedience that I do, that sin and disobedience also comes on the day of judgment in a particular form. And so everything has a reality in the next life. It's not just abstract things, it becomes a reality. It comes as a certain blessing or a punishment. And so the wealth that a person amasses, يَوْمَ يُحْمَى عَلَيْهَا فِي نَارِ جَهَنَّمَ, on that day it will be heated in the flames of the fire of hell. فَتُكْوَى بِهَا جِبَاهُهُمْ وَجُنُوبُهُمْ وَظُهُورُهُم, and they will be branded by this wealth on their foreheads, on their sides, and on their backs, like animals are branded. You know, when you heat up a piece of metal and you place that then branding on the animal, it's kind of to show that this is the animal, it belongs to this person, etc., etc. They either use the branding style or they will either use spray paint, etc. Back in the days, they would do branding or cauterization or various different things. And so Allah mentions that this is what will take place to this person. And it will be said to them, فَذُوقُوا مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ, here, really taste what you used to amass. Taste it, feel it. And the way you used to have this love for it, and the way you used to not spend, you never used to give your zakah, you never used to fulfill your duties to Allah, and you amassed it in whatever way you did, whether halal, haram, doesn't matter to you. فَذُوقُوا, now you can taste it, really enjoy the taste of it. مَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْنِزُونَ, this is what you used to hoard, this is what you used to amass. Was it worth it? Was it worth it? Allah mentions in another verse, فَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُم, don't let their wealth shock you. Don't let it amaze you. Don't yearn and lust after somebody else's wealth. وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ, and neither their children. Awlad can mean various things. Awlad can mean literal physical children, but it can also mean their strength. It can mean their power. Children, if you think about back in the days, children meant something. Children meant security. When you grow old, you are not able to take care of yourself, you're not able to earn for yourself. Your children do the earning for you, your children do the hard work for you. That's what children exist for, right? Especially in the older times. Less so now, but it's still the case now. But children were this kind of financial stability. It was a guarantee of finance. It was a guarantee of kind of, having somewhere to stay. It was a guarantee of being taken care of, etc. And so when you see somebody with all of these tools and this strength and this kind of, وَلَا تُعْجِبْكَ أَمْوَالُهُمْ وَلَا أَوْلَادُهُمْ, why are you looking at people's wealth and saying, wow, they've got so much money, they've got so much power, they've got manpower, they've got this, they've got that. إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُعَذِّبَهُمْ بِهَا فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Allah really only gives it to them so that He can punish them by means of it in this world. وَتَزْحَقَ أَنفُسُهُمْ, and their souls, they exit and they depart this world وَهُمْ كَافِرُونَ, whilst they are in a state of kufr, ingratitude. Allah sometimes gives these blessings to people. Sometimes Allah gives you a hardship to bring you closer to Him. Sometimes Allah brings you a hardship to bring you closer to Him. No matter how difficult that hardship is, if it brings you closer to Allah, it was worth it. It was worth it. Why? Because there is nothing that matters more than your akhirah. And so even if you lost your entire home, even if you lost your entire family, even if you lost everything, but it brought you closer to Allah, that was a worthy exchange. It was a worthy exchange. Why? Because Allah is the most significant, the most worthy of exchanges. To gain Allah is to gain everything, and to lose Allah is to lose everything. And so this concept, why are you looking at people with wealth and with this and with other blessings that you don't have? Maybe Allah uses that to punish them in this world. Punish them how now? Scholars have lengthy discussions of how is a person punished by means of this. Sometimes you're punished through your wealth. Various different ways, we've talked about it. You sometimes lose the most important things. You're left with the wealth, but you lose your family. You lose the people that matter to you. Or you get to keep lots and lots of wealth, but you lose free time. You lose sense of who you are. You lose sense of your principles. It becomes about the margins. How can I make a little bit more? How can I do this person over just to make a little bit more? How can I rip this person off just to get a bit more? Because it will make my bottom line a bit more. I can get a larger margin, this, that. Fil hayati dunya. This world becomes this kind of constant punishment for this person. Let's not even talk about the next life. The next life, of course, will be then on top of that. والعذاب هنا هو الألم والمشقة والتعب. And so Ibn al-Qayyim says the punishment that is talked about here is this constant struggle, this constant effort that a person has to make for wealth. Allah, the Prophet ﷺ mentions in another hadith, "As-safaru qit'atun min al-adhab." Traveling is a chunk or is a fraction of punishment. What does that mean? So it's a statement of the Prophet ﷺ. It's a hadith of Bukhari, it's a hadith of Muslim. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu narrates it. When the Prophet ﷺ says that as-safaru qit'atun min al-adhab, no matter how comfortable you are in your travel, it's going to be a fraction of adab, punishment. And I'll explain it to you in this way. For me and you, any form of travel that we do, it's a punishment. Even for somebody who's a multimillionaire, the comforts and the luxuries they have in their home, even in first class, they don't have those comforts and those luxuries. It's still a reduction from what you are living. It's still a necessary evil. You still have that fatigue or this tiredness or that jet lag or whatever it is. Even if you got a good night's sleep, even if you're in business class, first class, whatever you're in, it's still not the same as the comforts that you have wherever you're staying. And so the Prophet ﷺ says, "As-safaru qit'atun min al-adhab." This idea of it's going to have some burden. Traveling has some burden. Similar with traveling through this world, there's burdens that come with it. The Prophet ﷺ, "Inna al-mayyita yu'addabu bi bukai ahlihi alayhi khair." Various different narrations that the Prophet ﷺ mentions. Ibn al-Qayyim says, "وهكذا من الدنيا كل همه أو أكبر همه كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في الحديث الذي رواه الترمذي وغيره من حديث أنس رضي الله عنه." There's a famous hadith that the Prophet ﷺ mentions, the hadith of Tirmidhi, which is narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu. I've mentioned it previously, I'll mention it again. "من كانت الآخرة همه," that person who makes the akhirah the objective, جعل الله غناه في قلبه, Allah will enrich this person's heart. وجمع له شمله, Allah will gather this person's affairs. وأتته الدنيا وهي راغمة, and the dunya comes to this person in a state of humiliation. When you make your focus the akhirah, Allah makes everything come and submit to yourself. ومن كانت الدنيا همه, but a person who makes this dunya the objective, جعل الله فقره بين عينيه, Allah places poverty in front of this person's eyes constantly. وفرق عليه شمله, Allah scatters their affairs. Half of your money is here, some of your money is there, business here, this debt comes in here, this issue comes in here. You've just about made some money, now the car, this problem happens with the car, then this happens and that happens. Constantly it comes in, it goes out, it comes in. وَلَمْ يَأْتِي مِنَ الدُّنْيَا إِلَّا مَا قُدِّرَ لَهُ, nothing is given to this person from this dunya except that which is written for this person. ومن أبلغ العذاب في الدنيا تشتيت الشمل وتفرق القلب. Ibn al-Qayyim says, from the worst punishments you can get in this world is تشتيت الشمل, if Allah scatters your affairs and your matters. وتفرق القلب, and He makes your heart a mess. If your heart is a mess and you have no control over your heart, your control over your desires, your whims, your kind of fancies, you can't get a grip of that, that is one of the worst punishments that a person can have. وَكَوْنُ الْفَقْرِ نُصْبَ عَيْنَيِ الْعَبْدِ لَا يُفَارِقُهُ. One of the worst things a person can have is constantly having poverty in front of them. You have wealth, you have money, you have this, but you still feel poor. And I've always said this. The best financial advice that I can give to anybody, the first advice is live within your means. If you learn to live within your means, you are going to be comfortable. Whatever your means are, live within them. You don't need to live outside of your means. Live within your means. So if you know, I have this much coming in, then I can only have that much going out. If I want to save up for something, I have to earn that thing. I have to save up. I have to prove to myself that I've earned that thing to save it. This idea of, you know what, I can split this payment over 3 months, let me get this, and then I'll split this payment over 3 months, I'll get this, and I'll split this payment over 3 months, I'll get this. And then it turns out that I've split so many payments up over 3 months and 5 months and 7 months that now I can't even cover the basics and the fundamentals. And so now I have to take a credit card out. And the permissibility of a credit card, it's not permissible. A credit card is not permissible under the vast majority of instances. There are a few exceptional instances where it would be permissible, but the vast majority of cases, it's not permissible, especially if you know that you will not be able to repay that debt. There are some instances where if a person is doing their credit score, as soon as they spend it, they immediately top it up. But even that, there's people that I've said this to and they've not been able to, and then they end up in sin. So even that, I would say, live within your means, fundamentally. That is the most important thing when it comes to these things. But that's the problem with us, that I want this and I want this and I want this and I want that. I said to the Youth Essentials class that comes on Fridays, and I said to them, Write down for me the last gadget that you bought, the last piece of tech that you bought, or something that somebody bought for you, or you bought for somebody, or something like that. So they all wrote it down. Various different things. One guy said they got a VR headset. One of them said they got a massaging thing and this and that. I said, after the first 1 month, how many times have you used it? A vast majority of them haven't used it since. After a month, nobody uses these things. You buy this stuff, you think you're happy with it. Why are you buying it? You're filling your heart, you're trying to fill that happiness. You think you find this joy in shopping and this and that. Yes, there is sometimes. Look, I'll be honest with you, even me, I enjoy looking at aesthetic things. So I like to see matching things or this or that, etc., etc. I like to see even window shopping. I don't mind it. I don't hate it. I'm not that against it. I like the idea of buying it. I don't need to buy it. I just want to see, like, okay, that's interesting. It's ideas. It's creativity. It allows you to think. It allows you to pair things together. You'll see two different colors. You're like, I'd never have put those two colors together. This, that, etc. That's part of the process. That's what you have to do when you're doing Canva designs and stuff like that, right? All the posters that you guys see, that thought process goes into it. But now somebody might not be into that. Somebody might be into something else. But it's about knowing what you need and what you don't need. It's at that point. And remember, that's part of the process. It's not about being stingy. You'll spend hundreds of pounds on something you need. But if it comes down to something like a pencil and you're like, well, I don't need this pencil, then don't buy it. That's not stinginess. That's being smart. But if you need something which is worth 300 pounds, you need to get it, get it. It's about knowing where to spend your money. It's about knowing what you need. وَكَوْنُ الْفَقْرِ نُصْبَ عَيْنَيِ الْعَبْدِ لَا يُفَارِقُهُ. Otherwise, you'll constantly be in the state of poverty because you're going after the dunya. And the dunya doesn't give back to you. The dunya just takes from you. وَلَوْلَا سَكْرَةُ عُشَّاقِ الدُّنْيَا بِحُبِّهَا لِاسْتَغَاثُوا مِنْ هَذَا الْعَذَابِ. Ibn al-Qayyim says in a beautiful way, if it wasn't for the intoxication of the lovers of this world and their love for it, they would have sought protection from this punishment. The love of this world is a punishment. The love of this world is shackles. The love of this world has tied you down. If it wasn't for the intoxication that you are in, لِاسْتَغَاثُوا مِنْ هَذَا الْعَذَابِ, you would have sought protection from this punishment. You would have sought Allah's help from this punishment. Comes in a hadith of Tirmidhi where Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu mentions that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, يقول الله تبارك وتعالى, Allah himself says, Ibn Adam, O son of Adam, تفرغ لعبادتي, busy yourself in my obedience. Obedience doesn't mean worship, doesn't mean salah, it's everything. Obedience includes you going to work for the sake of Allah. You going to work for the sake of family. You going to work for these various different things. Even that's for Allah. Your eating is for Allah. Your drinking is for Allah. Your football is for Allah. Your sports are for Allah. Your even relaxing is for Allah. You're spending time playing games, this, that, etc. That's for Allah as well. That you're focusing this time for this time for this time for this. Everything has its time. This is time I'm spending with my family, the kids, etc. That's for Allah. This is the time I'm spending with my wife. I'm going to go. And from an Islamic perspective, we have such a cheat code in life. For men and for women. It's such a cheat code. You go and buy some flowers, Allah gets happy, your wife gets happy. You go and buy some chocolates, your husband gets happy, Allah gets happy. You go and buy some clothes, your wife gets happy, Allah gets happy. You go and surprise this person, Allah gets happy, they get happy. And it's ajib. In the pleasure of Allah, you can do all of these things. You give a gift to somebody, and Allah gets happy, and that person gets happy. It's such a cheat code. Like if Allah had said, you know what, when it comes to your relationships, because you're getting something out of it, that's cheating. That's not really for me, that's for them. So you don't get a reward for that. Allah doubles down on that kind of reward. You take a morsel of food and put it into your partner's mouth, you get a reward for that. For the married ones, yeah, not for the non-married ones. For the non-married ones, you wait. You keep putting the morsel of food in your mouth or your parents' mouths. That's it. That's as far as you can go. Otherwise, Mufti said you can, I'll get reward for this. So the Prophet ﷺ says, Allah himself says, Ibn Adam, تفرغ لعبادتي أملأ صدرك غنى. I will enrich your heart. Hadith of Tirmidhi, where the Prophet ﷺ says that you focus on obeying me. You focus on making me happy, and I will fill your heart with contentment. I will make you happy. I will give you what you're looking for. What more can a person want? وَأَسُدَّ فَقْرَكَ, and I will remove your poverty. Asudda comes from the word sadda. Sadda is to place a wall. I will place a wall between you and poverty. If you focus on my obedience, if you focus on pleasing me, I will open the doors eventually. If you do things the halal way, the proper way, the doors will open. If you do things in a haram way, the consequences of that you will have to bear eventually at some point. If you do something an impermissible way, the consequences of that you will bear eventually at some point. Like there's no getting out of that. وَإِلَّا تَفْعَلْ مَلَأْتُ يَدَيْكَ شُغْلًا. But if you don't do this, O son of Adam, then I will fill your hands with busyness. I will make you occupied. I will make you busy. I will give you things to do. وَلَمْ أَسُدَّ فَقْرَكَ, and I won't even seal off the poverty that you're trying to seal off. There's a process. This is the words of the Prophet ﷺ. These are the words of Allah. This is, as much as you believe in gravity existing as a law of this universe, you believe in this more. This is enshrined within the laws of the universe. If Allah and His Messenger have told us that this is the principle, if I go against that principle, I'm fighting against gravity. Worse than fighting against gravity. وهذا أيضا من أنواع العذاب, and Ibn al-Qayyim says this is also from the types of punishment. وهو اشتغال القلب والبدن بتحمل أنكاد الدنيا ومجاذبة أهلها إياها. That the heart is busy with the burdens of this world and it has the headache of people. Dealing with people is a headache. Dealing with people is a constant headache. All of you will know, especially those of you who get married. No, I'm not talking about your wives. I'm saying once you get married, you'll realize dealing with everybody is a headache. Whether it's the in-laws, whether it's the parents, whether it's this, whether it's that, whether it's this person, whether it's siblings, whether it's that. It just becomes like this constant battle. And then on top of that, then people, wedding time, this person inviting that person, this person gets upset, that person gets upset. Then Eid day, doing this, doing that. Constant, you're stepping on tiptoes and this, that. Dealing with people is not easy. Dealing with people, especially, by the way, in a society now where everybody is at the center, everybody's player one. When everybody's player one, then it's even harder. That I have to please this person and then this person and this person. But you looked at him a little more than you looked at me. Like, come on, man. Like you said Assalamu alaikum to me, but you said Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to him. So you gave a little bit more to that person. What's going on? I mean, it's this constant kind of, whereas if a person does for Allah, none of this stuff affects them. ومقاسات معاداتهم كما قال بعض السلف. And so some of these salaf, the classical scholars, they would say, من أحب الدنيا, the person who loves this world, فليوطن نفسه على تحمل المصائب, and let this person prepare themselves to carry burdens. If you love this world, prepare to carry a bunch of burdens, because the love of this world brings nothing but burdens and difficulties and hardships. ومحب الدنيا لا ينفك من ثلاث, the person who loves this world is not free from three things. Number one, هم لازم, a constant worry. You're constantly worried. How can I get this? How can I get more of this? How can I improve on this? How can I? وَتَعْبٍ دَائِمٍ, on a constant fatigue. You're constantly tired. You're constantly fatigued. You're constantly, trying to do this and trying to do this and trying to do this. People have sensationalized the grind. People have made this like something you should be working for. And let me get my grind in and let me get this. And they made it something like it's something you should aim for. At the expense of what? At the expense of what? Have we ever had that conversation? Let me grind at the expense of what? What am I going to lose if I do this grind? Do I have to grind when it comes at the expense of my religion? Do I have to grind when it comes at the expense of my family? Do I grind at the expense of my own health? The Sharia gives you the principles in this regard. وَلِبَدَنِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا وَلِنَفْسِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا وَلِأَهْلِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. These people have rights, your family has rights, these people, you have rights. وَحَسْرَةٌ لَا تَنْقَضِي, and regrets that never end. Three things that a lover of the dunya will never be free from. A constant worry and a concern. Think about this. You're constantly comparing yourself with other people. You're constantly looking at that person's car. You're constantly looking at that person's makeup. You're constantly looking at that person's money. You're constantly looking at that person's holiday. You're constantly looking at that person's followers. You're constantly looking at all of these things. These are the things that bear heavy on you. That, constant worry, constant tension, constant, how can I do this? How can I get this? How can I achieve this? How can I look like this? How can I this? وَتَعْبٍ دَائِمٍ, and constant fatigue, mental fatigue, physical fatigue. وَحَسْرَةٌ لَا تَنْقَضِي, and a regret that never ends. That regret now or that regret later, that regret in the next life, constantly, it's always there. Person will hit the age of 60 and say, I wish I prioritized my 20s and my 30s for myself and for my religion instead of trying to run after the things that people told me to do. I wish I focused on family and I wished I focused on this and I wished I focused on this, as opposed to the things that the rest of the world was saying. Maybe you should focus on this. Maybe you should spend some time on this, and maybe you should get a career, and maybe you should this and that. I should have done all of that, but I shouldn't have done it at the expense of this. This is the balance I'm trying to show us. I'm not saying don't do. I'm saying make sure it's not at the expense of something more important. I don't try and acquire £5 at the expense and at the loss of, mountains of gold and silver. Because at the end of the day, you're going for that career. Why? To bring you happiness. But that happiness might be somewhere else. And so you might say, let me go easy on this and let me focus on this. Let me balance this a little bit. وَذَلِكَ أَنَّ مُحِبَّهَا لَا يَنَالُ مِنْهَا شَيْئًا. And by the way, you're going to be constantly bombarded with these ads every other day of somebody saying, I used to be just like you, I used to work this many hours a day and now I get to be on holiday and I earn 50,000 a month and this and that, etc. And you'll see these ads constantly. I can guarantee you if that person was making a fraction of what they're claiming, they wouldn't need to put an ad out for you to come and purchase their course. They'd give it you for free. They're selling something as well. They might be making something, but they're selling something to you as well because they need to make some money as well. كما في الحديث الصحيح عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لو كان لابن آدم واديان. Again, this is one of the laws of existence. Just like the laws of science exist, this is a law of science. لو كان لابن آدم واديان. It doesn't say for the sinful people, doesn't any son of Adam. This is an intrinsic quality in us. لو كان لابن آدم واديان. If you had two valleys filled من مال, filled with wealth, لابتغى لهما ثالثا. They would yearn for and seek a third. Every person says, if I was to win the lottery, or if I was to win £1 million or something like that, I'd be happy with that. You're never happy with 1 million. The hadith says if you had 2 million, you'd seek a third. That's the nature. You can convince yourself and say to yourself, I'm happy. But you'll say to yourself, yeah, 1 million is good, but that's not going to be generational type of wealth. That's not going to keep me going for that long. I'm still going to have to work. Let me invest this. Let me do this. Let me do that. Let me kind of secure myself. And then I can make a bit more. I can keep living off this. I can do this. I can make passive income. Constantly a person. That's the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, hadith of Bukhari, hadith of Muslim, narrated by Anas ibn Malik, radiyallahu anhu. And so this is a fundamental of life. That's not to say don't seek. That's to say no, this will never stop. This has no end. As Ibn al-Qayyim says, he says that Isa alayhi salam gave an example that the person muhibbud dunya bisharib al-bahr is like somebody who drinks the water of the ocean, salt water. كلما ازداد شربا, the more you drink, ازداد عطشا, the more thirstier you get. The more salty water you drink, the thirstier you get. That's the nature of this world. The more you get of it, the more you will yearn, the more you will desire for. So a person needs to have these healthy things, targets set out. This is the start of a new year, 2026. As believers, we don't really have this as a new year. Our new year is Muharram, but there's no harm in taking advantage of an opportunity. And so you say to yourself, just like a businessman will say, fine, April is my new year. And so that's the kind of financial year a person will take down. Similarly, you can make changes at the start of this year. And you can say to yourself, what do I want to achieve? And I do this as well. In 2026, what do we want to achieve from Sidna? What do we want to achieve on a personal level? What do we want to achieve as a collective level? What types of courses and what types of material and what direction do we want to go in? We have a meeting tomorrow specifically for this with the kind of, the trustees at Zidna, and we're kind of thinking, okay, where do we direct our energy and where do we direct and how much investment do we need in this area and how much do we need here and where are we going to put the money, where are we going to focus our energy? That kind of happens in every organization. It has to happen. You can't do it without. You can't do it yourself. You can't kind of develop yourself without having these goals as well. Ask yourself realistically, by the end of 2026, where do I want to be? And then ask yourself, okay, if that's where I want to be, that's what I want to have achieved, then what do I need to do per month? And if that's per month, then what do I need to do per week? What do I need to do per day? What does that look like? And so you give yourself realistic targets and you give yourself realistic goals. Saturday, Sundays, I'm going to give myself off. I'm not going to do these things. Am I going to create a chart from now? I'm going to create a chart and I'm just going to log my salah. If I perform a salah, I'll give it a tick. If I don't perform a salah, I'll leave it blank. And let me do that for a month. And that means that even if it looks the most horrendous way, I've missed a whole week of salah as an example, I still have to do it. Because that's how accountability looks. Accountability is uncomfortable. Accountability is having conversations that make you feel uncomfortable. And it's sitting yourself down and saying, this is the state of your salah in the last week. Imagine you were to die today. This is what you would stand. This is your book of deeds. Ask yourself now, when you're holding that in your hands, am I going to receive this in my right hand? Am I going to receive this in my left hand? Like, be honest with yourself and say, which hand do I really think I would receive this book of deeds? This is my book of deeds. I produced it in front of me. That's it. This is the book of deeds. You died. Which hand are you getting it in? I know which hand I'm getting it in. And make those changes gradually. That's it now. I'm going to, once I've got my salah on point, then I add this in, then I add that in, then I add that in. Slowly, you add these things, and cumulatively you'll see that change and that improvement. But you have to do something. It's not going to happen by itself. No, nobody's going to wave a magic wand and say, khalas, done. That's it. You know, you're going to be righteous now. You've attended 10 of these classes. You've attended 20 of these classes. Now it's fair for your life to change. The point of these classes is, when will I take and what action will I take? Right? And so, khair, we should be wrapping up now. And so Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he points this concept out, and he says that, look, this fundamentally is this idea that a person, فَالْمَحْبُوبُ مَعَ مَحْبُوبِهِ دُنْيَا وَأُخْرَى, a person is with the person that they love in this world and in the next life, right? And the efforts that you put in is what the efforts that you'll get out. It's as simple as that. And he also mentions a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, al-mar'u ma'a man ahab, a person will be with those individuals that he loves. And we'll finish on that statement of Ibn al-Qayyim, when then he will then mention the seventh point, and then he'll finish this section off inshallah next week, and we'll move on to the next set of discussions where he actually, remember, he did this tangent on Surah Al-Fatiha and talking about loving Allah and all of these things. Then he's going to continue that the adwiyatul qalb wa ilajuha, what are the illnesses of the heart and what are the cures for that, and he's going to specifically start on that. But the last thing he mentions, al-mar'u ma'a man ahab, you will be with those people that you love. You will be with those individuals that you love. Not who you claim to love, not who you say, I love this person, but love is shown through emulation. Who do I yearn to copy? Who do I want to be with? Who do I, whose life am I more interested in? If I was to be able to sit in the company of somebody, who would I choose? And the way you know that is in your privacy. Who do you choose to sit with? On YouTube, what's the content that you look at? On Instagram, what's the material that you look at? Because that's who you love. That's who you like to spend time with. That's when you're sat down and you're relaxing. That's who I'd rather sit with. Would I rather sit with this, or would I rather sit with that? And so what you choose, that's demonstrating what you really love. So ask yourself, how far are we from the love of Allah and His Messenger? Does that mean that and by the way, a lot of the time, our lack of love for Allah and His Messenger is not because of our arrogance or this, it's because of our ignorance. We don't know Allah, we don't know His Messenger. We haven't read a seerah cover to cover. We haven't read a translation of the Quran cover to cover. So what can I really know about Allah and His Messenger? I say this so many times. I say this so often. How many times do I say this to you guys? That when was the last time you picked up the Quran and started reading it cover to cover? You read a seerah cover to cover. Not just to memorize it and to show off to people. Like, you start reading the seerah and you come across the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ. So you start memorizing Muhammad ibn Abdullah ibn this all the way. And that's it. Now watch, if somebody asks me. The wives of the Prophet ﷺ, I've memorized them. The children, I've memorized them. If somebody asks me. And then when it comes to it, you've forgotten it within a week. You didn't memorize to learn or to understand. Do you have to sit there memorizing the names of the first 11 football players in your football team? Do you have to sit there memorizing the various different names of musicians and artists that you love? Do you have to sit there memorizing the names of your favorite actors and actresses? You don't memorize any of these things. These things come to you naturally because you are connected to them. When you become connected to the messenger and the companions, the names come naturally to you. You don't have to sit memorizing them. So why we sat there trying to memorize them as though we're trying to prove something to somebody? The only thing we're proving to ourselves is that I don't have any connection to these people. I don't know who these people are. If I was to write a profile on the major companions, I probably wouldn't be able to do much at all. If I was to say to you, write about Abu Bakr, other than the fact that he was the first caliph and he traveled with the Prophet ﷺ in the Hijrah, actually, why don't you write on Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu the moment the Prophet ﷺ passed away? He lived for 2 years. Write whatever you can on Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu after the Prophet passed away. Write anything on Umar radiallahu anhu in the 12 years that he was, on the 10 years that he was the Khalifa. Write anything on him after the Prophet ﷺ passed away. Not during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, after he passed away. Write anything on Uthman radiallahu anhu in the 12 years that he lived. Anything that you can write on him, write that. But we can't write anything on Ali radiallahu anhu, the 6 years that he was there after the Prophet ﷺ. We can't. So fundamentally, we don't know these people. The first 4 caliphs we don't know, let alone the other companions. And so, what really do we have to stand on when it comes to our religion? How obviously we don't love Allah and His Messenger the way we should because we don't let ourselves. And so again, this is some thoughts. Now, there's only so much you can do. There's only so much you can do. You can't do everything in one go. It's a gradual process. But whatever you do, if you do it consistently, you'll be able to achieve a lot. And so you have to start somewhere. You have to start somewhere. One of the ways that I find the most effective of falling in love with Allah and the Quran is to understand the Quran. Right? And sometimes it's not about reading through a full translation of the Quran. Sometimes it's looking at sections of the Quran. So we're starting our course tomorrow, Surah Muzammil, specifically with this object in mind. Surah Muzammil is one of the earliest surahs of the Quran. And that's going to be every Tuesdays and Thursdays that class is going to run. And so that's going to be like the kind of deeper tadabbur tafsir that we normally do, the kind of Surah Yusuf style tafsir. But that's going to be in Surah Muzammil. It's about 20 verses that we're covering, but it's a very different style to the Medinan Quran, or rather the stories. The story of Yusuf alayhi salam, it takes a very different approach. If you liked the Surah Insan tafsir, the هل أتى على الإنسان هل أتى على الإنسان شيء من الدهر لم يكن شيء مذكورا, that tafsir, if you like that style, you're going to like the Surah Muzammil style. But that's something that I'm thinking of presenting so that we can be thinking about that. But there's various other things that you can do in your own time, in your free time, in whatever time you have to develop yourself further. Just reading about the life of the Prophet ﷺ, 35 days. Set yourself a goal. In 30 days, I can easily read a certain chunk. Me personally, I'm not the type that can do 2 sides a day. I don't like setting a target because why? I'll read 2 sides, I come back the next day, I don't even know where I've left off. I can't read like that. Some people can. Some people can do 2 sides, 2 sides, 2 sides, 2 sides. I'm the type of person that just needs to lock in and I'll do 30 sides in a moment. And then the next day I'll do another 20 sides or something like that. Like I can't just say, just before I go to bed, I'm going to do 2 sides a day. That might not work for you. You've got to find your style and you've then got to work with that. You understand? And so, everybody's different. Everybody's different. Find your style, right? Stop trying to copy everybody else and do what works for you. And so, everybody's different. And so Allah give us all tawfiq. There's a bit of a kind of, we started off with a few random things. We also ended with a few random things. But we covered the 6th point of Ibn al-Qayyim here today. And these were, inshallah, beneficial, important discussions, which we'll finish off, inshallah, next week. And then we'll get started with some of the more important discussions that we want to get into. Any questions before we conclude? So he does have a chapter coming up soon, في زكاة القلب, and the reformation of the heart, then في طهارة القلب من أدرانه ونجاسته, cleansing it from its filth and the dirt of the heart. And then he gets kind of, going into these discussions and some of the du'as of the Prophet ﷺ, which are very, very powerful. Allahumma tahhirni min khatayaya. Allah cleanse me from my sins, bil ma'i, with water, with thalji wal barad, with ice and with cold. So that's interesting. Why does he specifically use such vivid imagery of that nature, and ice and cold? Can you imagine for the Bedouin desert person, what they're thinking of when they read that? في علامات مرض القلب. What are the signs of the ill heart, on the heart that's kind of, unwell? What are the kind of some of things? So من علاماته. And then في علاج مرض القلب من استيلاء النفس عليه. How to kind of bring your nafs under control. If your nafs is the thing that's dragging you down, etc. Various different things that he's going to discuss, inshallah. This isn't a kind of, quick one-day session or one quick thing fix all. We've got to take Ibn al-Qayyim's syllabus gradually, and as he presents it to us, we'll go through it, inshallah. Khair. If there's no questions, let's see if there's any questions online. And how do you overcome the fear of this death process? What's to happen? There's a question. If you accept everything you mentioned and do look forward to seeing Allah in Jannah and don't feel attached to the dunya, how do you overcome the fear of this death process and what's to happen, etc.? It's a good question. Basically, if you are looking forward to seeing Allah in Jannah, the way you see death at that point is it's a bridge that connects you with Allah. It's the bridge that you have to cross through which you will come to Allah. Now, everybody will experience the sakaratul maut, the pangs of death. Everybody experiences that. Death has its pangs. Inna lil mawti sakarat, that's a phrase of the Prophet ﷺ. Even he experienced the pangs of death. Death is something that we all have to go through. But this is why some of the du'as of the righteous people was, Allah, make my final moments the greatest moments, or the best moments of my life. Make the day that I meet you the best day of my life, right? And for the believer leaving this world, the scholars mention in the hadith, or it's in the famous hadith of Musnad of Imam Ahmad, your soul is extracted. When you're kneading dough, and the hair falls into that dough, and you basically go and pinch that hair out of the dough. How easy is that process? You just pinch the hair out of the dough and you've taken it out. That's how that person's soul will be extracted. Whereas a person who's attached to this world and a person who is disobedient to Allah, for them, it will be like a metal comb pulling its way through wet wool. Right? Imagine what that would look like. And so, that process of leaving this world, and the entire process is made easier with the presence of angels. The angels, they come to comfort an individual. Allah sends the angels of rahmah that come and they stand at a distance. They're dressed in good clothes. They have good perfume on. All of these various things that make a person feel comfortable. That famous hadith in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, you'll be able to find it if you take a look through that hadith. The entire process, how comforting it is for the believer. And then the only scary part of that process is where a window into the fire of hell is opened for this believer. And the believer it's said to them that this is where you would have gone had you not been the way you were. And that door is closed and the door of Jannah is open for this individual. And so, Allah make our final moments the best of our life and make our meeting with Him the best. But this is why these sessions are so important for all of us. We have to remind ourselves that this is a reality, this is coming, and this is one day that me and you will all enter into our graves. Thousands, millions, billions of people before us have entered into the graves, and we will also enter into the graves, and the rest of the world will continue. The world continues. The world continues. It stops for no man. If it didn't stop for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who am I and who is anybody else that it's going to stop for them? The world continues. This is the nature of this world, that it continues. People move on. A week later, a month later, a few years later, everybody moves on and people continue. Yes, every now and then you'll have pangs and you'll remember a certain individual, you'll remember this. At the Ramadan table, this person was here, they're not here. Eid time, they would be here, they're not here. But even after a little while, Allah gives us other blessings. Allah gives us other family members. Allah gives us other people that come into our lives and come into our world. And Allah removes that pain as well, gradually. And so this is that process. This is that, the way the dunya is, it's constantly changing and it's constantly got these things. I mean, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even for himself though, he was somebody who Allah had given him the option of taking the riches of this world and having everything in this world without the displeasure of Allah. But the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't care for it because Allah didn't care for it, so he didn't care for it. And so, this is part of the process. Anyway, may Allah give us all tawfiq. We'll wrap it up there, inshallah. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum. If you haven't signed up to the class tomorrow, sign up for that, inshallah. zidna.co.uk/tadabbur, spelled with a double B. So tadabbur, inshallah. Khair, we'll wrap it up there. Assalamu alaikum.